Young man, I worked 40 hours a week my last 2 years in high school. Then I went in the Army, and working 60, 80 hours a week was nothing. Some guys had trouble transitioning. To me, it was called life. But from the time I've gotten out of the service, I was divorced. I had full custody of my two oldest girls. So it was an unusual life, to say the least. Many things I relied on my mother and my sister to help my daughters with. Some things a dad just doesn't want to know. But when you're both mom and dad, those lines get blurred, but you try your best. But this really isn't about the struggles of a single dad. It's more about, or actually, maybe it is some of the struggles of a single dad. Maybe it's the struggles of every dad. Because we get up early, we leave the house, we go to work, and after 8, 10, 12 hours, we come back so exhausted that we're little more than a shell of a dad. When the kids want to play, we're often too tired. And it's not that we don't want to. I used to sit on the floor, and after my one daughter decided to do a cannonball off the back of the couch onto my lap, I started pulling the coffee table in front of me because I would frequently fall asleep, and they would be doing things, because now I have both my two oldest and I had two small ones, so I had four daughters, and they all wanted to play with dad. It was nothing to have one painting my fingernails. Now, I bought them special polish for kids that you could wash off anything. But there was one time that they got into their mother's fingernail polish, and they decided that was the shade I needed. And I had fallen asleep. And I think she knew, but she thought it would be funny, because when they painted my fingernails, imagine a 2-year-old painting your fingernails. She painted the finger, most of the finger. And yet, those are some of the best memories I have. My daughter one time told me those times when she would do my makeup and I would be falling asleep. But she said, "You never stopped me." She said, "Looking back on it, Dad, you were so tired you couldn't hardly hold your head up. But you made time for us." Well, I tried. I feel like I was a total failure, but I tried. But the one time I got the fingernail polish on, and the next morning I woke up and I'm rushing around. I'm trying to wash with a scrub brush, wash this off, and it won't come off. My ex-wife, who was my wife at the time, she's sitting at the table sipping on coffee that she's laughing out her nose. She's laughing so hard. And I knew right then she knew what was going on. So I had to go to work. Went to work. I went straight to the tool shanty, got into the tapping oil, and I'm trying to clean as much as I could off. And the gentleman that took care of the tool shanty, he only had one arm. And because he was injured at work, they gave him basically a lifetime job, and he was in there. It was sort of an easy job, I guess. And he comes in, and he looks over, and I'm trying to hide what I'm doing. He looks over and he said, "Cobb, they make nail polish for little girls that wash off with soap and water." I said, "Yeah, I know, but they got into their mothers." And he's laughing. And he brings over some denatured alcohol, and he said, "This will take it off." I said, "How do you know that?" He said, "I have 4 daughters of my own. Nothing's new under the sun." And I immediately thought of my grandma, because that's exactly what my grandma used to say. Well, him and my grandmother were close in age. He wasn't quite as old, but very. So I expected everyone, because, he was he was in charge of the gossip of the plant. People would come to him for various tools and drill bits and tapping oil, and he was the repository of all of the rumors that were going around about the company. I figured the whole plant would know. 2, 3, 4 days later, not a soul knew. And I asked him, I said, thanks for not telling everyone. He said, oh, I told a few people. And they laughed and laughed. And they remembered the time their daughters did that to them. I felt a little bit better. But I thought, how many dads do that? It seems like there's a fair amount that will sit down, have tea at a table so tiny you can't fit under, and let those little girls do pretty much whatever they want to. Rouge, eyelashes, the whole, yeah, yeah. I've tried to not leave the house looking like that, except that one time. I couldn't help it. But I was thinking back to those days when I was working, and I do tend to drift a little bit, but I think it's important to understand that most dads that I know, they would love to have more time with their families. They just don't know how to squeeze it in. The only way I could earn enough money after my second divorce, I had child support for the 2 daughters I had with that particular lady, and I had the 2 older ones. And so I had to support my girls. Now, there were no jobs locally that paid enough. So I had to do something I never wanted to do again. I went back out on the road working construction. I landed a job immediately as soon as I told the company that I was willing to go back on the road. I got a foreman position. And a few weeks later, a superintendent's position. Now, keep in mind, I was fairly young. I started having kids long before a young man should. So when I give advice to some of the younger generation, I'm giving you advice based on what can go wrong. And if you don't take time to plan things, to really plan them later in life, that's when you pay the price, the real price for taking shortcuts in your early life. Now, I wouldn't trade my kids for anything in the world, but if I would have waited, I would have had those children, perhaps with the wife I have now. 28 years, and she's every day says, I hope I have at least 28 more. So if we take time and plan things, and this is what I tell the younger generation. Take time and plan things, think things through, and you never really know a person until you have at least one cross-country drive with them. And yes, I've done it. But when I took the job traveling, what it meant was I was going from state to state, city to city, building shopping centers. You know, the ones that used to be all the rage. Everybody, you go into a small town and the downtown area is dead. Drive down the main street and there's one business open. They built a mall and everybody moved to the mall. Now, they're getting away from the malls so quickly. Malls have completely fallen out of style. But I would travel, mostly by pickup truck or my van, and go from city to city and try to get home every other weekend. I would try to get home every other weekend so I could see my girls. And there were times when I was just too far away to drive back and forth. When I did drive, it meant I left at midnight Sunday, and I would leave the job site at noon on Friday. One time I had an employer ask me to tell me I couldn't do that. And I said, why? The job's running fine. There's nothing major going on Friday. And I've already got 65 hours in this week. how many hours do you want? Well, I want you there. I said, well, okay, if that's what you want, it's not going to happen. So let me know if I need to come back. I have everything in my truck. Let me know. If you want me to come back on Monday, I'll come back on Monday. If not, no hard feelings. I'll go find a job someplace else because I'm already missing my kids enough. You're home every night with your kids. So I'm not in the mood for it. Well, he called me Saturday, apologized, and said, yes, I want you to come back on Monday. Never gave me any trouble after that. I think he had maybe a talk with his wife because she seemed pretty level-headed. They owned the company that he inherited from his daddy. And yes, he was one of those types. But she seems level-headed. And I have a feeling that he was trying to get some sympathy out of her for what a horribly mean man I was. And she said, why do you begrudge the man? He does more for you than most of your superintendents. If he needs to stay there for 16, 20 hours, he stays. He does everything that has to be done. So if he can plan things so he can leave on Friday at noon, so he can tuck his kids in on Friday night, leave the man alone. I just have a feeling because she always struck me as that type. Him coming to his senses to call me and apologize, that made me think that, yeah, he went home and instead of sympathy, he got, what kind of a horse's ass are you, out of his wife. So I'm driving, and when I was too far away to drive, I would fly home every other weekend. Back then, there was no waiting to get you. That was back when O.J. Simpson was running through the airport for, I think, Hertz Rent-A-Car. I ran through that airport to make the connections. And after a few weeks, some of the people that worked at the airport in Atlanta, they knew me, and they knew exactly where I was headed. One time, I have no idea what this gentleman's name is, but he knew the exact flight I was coming in on. And he just knew the flight that came in, and I'm normally on it. And it was running an hour late, which meant I only had like 10 minutes to be on the other side of the airport. When I came out the gate, of course, I'm only carrying my carry-on. He was there, and he said, "Sir, I have the cart here. I'm going to take you to your flight." So as we're speeding through the airport, and he was flying, he kept calling, and he would give them a time. I'm 3 minutes out. I'm 5 minutes out. I'm bringing Mr. Cobb. And there was a delay one time, and he asked me, "You sure fly in an awful lot on Fridays?" I explained the situation. So on this particular day, he didn't want me to miss that connecting flight because it would mean I wouldn't be able to see my kids. That was 40 years ago. Wow. Yeah, it was 39, 40 years ago. But he didn't have to do that. He did that because he saw another dad rushing and pulling his hair out trying to fulfill the needs and wants of his kids. And he just had to help. And it struck me when I landed in Atlanta, and that man was waiting there for me. He just saw another dad that needed a little help. And he thought nothing of providing it. It was a joy for him to do that. I barely made the connecting flight, but the attendant told me he kept calling saying, "I'm on my way. I have a passenger for this flight. I'm on my way. Don't take off." And so the pilot said, "We'll give him a few minutes." Without that help, I wouldn't have made it home that weekend. That meant the world to me. I guess what I'm trying to say is that as much as we feel that we're on our own, we're really not. We really are part of a big collective. And there are people out there, when you think you're going through your darkest moment, there are people out there that care. Even if it's just a gentle hand on your shoulder, or to say, I'm sorry for your loss. Sometimes we don't know what to say. Sometimes we know that no matter what the words are, they're not going to comfort you. But yet, they're there, and they feel it. Right now, I have some people that subscribe to my channel that have just completely disappeared, and I can't find them anywhere. I don't know what happened. I know they're going through various types of trouble and trials right now, and the only thing I can do is pray for them. I worry about them. It's just the way I'm built. Being the oldest son, being responsible for the siblings, my siblings, it just instilled that in me from a very young age. When I know that people like friends and family are home safe and sound, I can sleep. When something's not right and when somebody's missing, I think about that. And yes, I think about the one that's lost instead of the rest that are here cheering me on, because I know they're okay. That's just me. That's one of the things I battle with. But if you're going through hard times, you don't have to go through it alone. There are a lot of people that are more than happy to help you. That's how I see it. I'm Grandpa Chuck. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.